You know, the Concorde, it was so much more than just a plane. It was a symbol of the future. But on one clear summer day, that future came to a fiery, tragic end. In this explainer, we're breaking down the fall of an icon.
Okay, so picture this. July 25th, 2000. A perfect summer day at Charles de Gaulle Airport in Paris. Conditions were, as one expert said, totally standard normal. No storms, no warnings, nothing. And that right there is what makes this so terrifying. A completely routine takeoff was about to become an unforgettable disaster.
And it all happened so fast. I mean, just look at this timeline. At 16:42, Concorde starts rolling. A mere 42 seconds later, a tire bursts. But it's already past the point of no return. It hits takeoff speed just 9 seconds after that. The entire catastrophe, from the start of the takeoff to that horrifying crash, unfolded in just 90 seconds. All 109 people on board and 4 more on the ground lost their lives.
But, to really get the full weight of this tragedy, you have to understand what the Concorde was. We have to appreciate the incredible height from which it fell. This was never just an airplane. It was a revolutionary piece of engineering, a true symbol of an era.
Get this, Mach 2.02. That's more than twice the speed of sound. And what did that actually feel like? Well, it was basically a time machine. You're flying at 60,000 feet, high enough to actually see the curvature of the Earth, all while feeling almost no sensation of that incredible speed. Just amazing.
I mean, this thing literally cut the flight time across the Atlantic in half. A 7-hour slog became a 3.5-hour hop. Business travelers, of course, loved it. You could have breakfast in Paris, land in New York with time for a second breakfast, get a full day of meetings in, and be back in Paris the next morning. It was a game changer.
And that shape, come on, it was just iconic, right? The British and French engineers had this huge challenge. For supersonic flight, you need that long, sharp aerodynamic nose. But when you're on the ground, that same nose completely blocks the pilot's view of the runway. Their solution? Absolutely brilliant. They designed a nose that drooped down for takeoff and landing, giving the pilots a perfect view.
Okay, so let's get back to that runway on that fateful day. Because what happened next wasn't just one single thing going wrong. It was a whole sequence of small, seemingly unrelated issues that all stacked up to create the perfect storm for a disaster. So let's just run through the state of this plane before it even started moving. It was overweight with extra bags. Its center of gravity was too far back, which is a big deal. The fuel tanks were filled right to the brim, leaving zero air gap to absorb any shocks. And to top it all off, it was taking off with a tailwind, which pushes the plane from behind and makes it way harder to get up to speed. But the thing that tipped it all over the edge, the final fatal link in this whole disastrous chain, was something no one on that plane could have ever known about. A 4.5-kilo piece of metal, a titanium strip, that had fallen off a Continental Airlines DC-10 that took off from the very same runway just a few minutes before.
So as the Concorde is blasting down the runway, its tire hits that metal strip, and it acts like a razor blade. It slices off this huge chunk of rubber, which gets launched like a missile into the bottom of the wing. Now remember how those fuel tanks were completely full? That meant the shockwave from the impact had nowhere to go. It ruptured the tank, and a massive plume of jet fuel started gushing out, getting instantly lit up by the roaring afterburners.
And you have to put yourself in the cockpit. Captain Christian Marty, a very experienced pilot, he and his crew likely had no idea about the fire. They probably thought they just blew a tire. By the time they were alerted to the fire, the plane was past V1, the decision speed. That's the point of no return. Procedure says you have to take off. Aborting was no longer an option.
So, after the smoke clears, the investigators get to work and trying to figure out what went wrong and who was to blame. Well, that turned into a huge, complex, and really controversial process.
And this is really where the debate begins. You had two competing theories. The official French investigation, the BEA, basically said it was two things: that metal strip on the runway and a known design weakness in the Concorde's fuel tanks. But a lot of other people, including veteran pilots, thought that was just too simple. They argued the strip was just the last domino to fall, and that the real cause was that whole cascade of pre-flight problems.
The whole thing ended up in court for years, and the final verdict was complicated. A French court eventually cleared Continental Airlines of any criminal wrongdoing, but it did hold them civilly responsible for that piece of debris on the runway. It just goes to show how hard it is to pin the blame on one single thing when a disaster has so many points of failure.
But the crash itself, it was just a devastating blow. They grounded the whole fleet, they retrofitted them with new Kevlar liners for the fuel tanks to make them safer, but the damage was done. The public's confidence in this incredible icon was completely shattered.
And look, let's be real. Even before the crash, Concorde was ridiculously expensive to fly. We're talking an average of $11,000 for a round-trip ticket. So after the crash, combined with the huge travel downturn after 9/11, the numbers just didn't work anymore. The dream was over. In 2003, British Airways and Air France retired the Concorde for good. And just like that, the age of supersonic passenger travel came to an end.
So today, the Concordes that are left just sit in museums around the world. They're these beautiful, silent testaments to an incredible ambition and engineering genius. But they're also a tragic reminder that even the greatest icons can be brought down by a chain of seemingly small mistakes.